everyone, this is Orion, Kilo Echo 7 Victor Lima Charlie with the Mesa Amateur Radio Club, and this video is going to be on our club networking, specifically, primarily geared towards doing our N3FJP software. However, the majority of the information that's going to be presented here is going to be something that you're going to be able to carry over to any and all software out there. This is not going to be a here's how you do it primarily. We're going to basically go over exactly how the Mesa Amateur Club basically does its networking in the field, so that hopefully your club or your organization can basically take what we do and try to implement it on your own. I just wanted to basically get that out of the way. This isn't going to be basically this is how you set up your router, this is how you do your cradle point, this is how you do your software. We're going to go through a little bit on how to do the N3FJP software, how to get it kind of set up and everything in a basic networking scenario. We're not going to go into how to do the FTP feeds or anything of that nature. Essentially, where we are going to end is basically at the cellular network level. Anything beyond connecting it to other sites is going to be a whole different ball game there, and that's a whole different, different skill set and everything. Be prepared. Yeah, you're going to need to know a couple things. You're going to need to have some basic networking skills and everything. Let me first explain exactly how this came about. The Mesa Amateur Radio Club started out just a couple people, basically Vinny and myself and Dennis, and maybe one or two other people coming out into the field. And so usually what we ended up doing is just having one radio, one mast, one antenna. We were a 1 alpha station running basically off of an inverter off of our car battery in the field. We didn't have laptops at the time. Well, we had laptops at the time, but we never ever used any logging software. Everything was done by paper and everything. And the drawbacks of paper is it gets wet. Then you have the issue with trying to figure out people's handwriting. My handwriting might be clear and concise because I was in the military, and so you have to be very, very good and diligent on doing your writing and logs and things of that nature. Not everybody was in the military. Not everybody was, taught how to do block lettering and stuff of that nature. So people's handwriting becomes a problem. And then on top of that, it's like, okay, if you've got a busted call, then you've got people putting lines across the paper, and it just causes a lot of confusion. And then on top of that, then you got the whole entire issue of, well, how many trees do we need to chop down in order to support this? We started out with paper logs, and it worked out really well for 1 or 2 stations. The problem is once you start adding extra stations, 3 or 4 or 5, all the way up to 22 different stations, you need to have a way to communicate with each other as to what band you're on, what mode you're on, and what is actually in the log. That's when it all of a sudden comes down to you need to have some sort of basic networking set up so that everybody can do it with the exact same skill set and the exact same method every single time, because that's in reality, that's what it comes down to, is consistency amongst everybody. Everybody has to be doing computer logs, or you end up coming into a situation where you have one station doing paper logs. You're going to have to take those paper logs and actually convert it into a computer log later on. Then you have to make sure that they're actually putting in the right time frame. Okay, are they putting it in UTC and you're doing it in local time, or vice versa? Then you've got the other issue of duplicates. They're sitting over there at their own little station far away from you. They switch over to 20 meters, you're on 20 meters, and you're both sitting there working on the same band, but you didn't communicate that, okay? The nice thing about having a computer system out there to do your logging is you reduce the amount, or you reduce the risk of getting duplicates, and then you also reduce the amount of errors within your logs itself. Field day isn't really a contest, but it's got some points, and it requires you to be, contacting other people. Now, you don't have to even have a log. All right, there's nothing in the rule book that says you have to have logs. You can simply just go through there and just start twiddling the dial and just making contacts with people and just, letting them know exactly who you are. That's fine and dandy. But then after we started with paper logs, we moved to a single laptop, which actually worked out really well. So we had a single computer out there for a long time because we were just basically a 1 alpha station, all right? We don't need a large networking setup because we only had one radio. Then we decided to add in a second radio, and that's when understanding a little bit of basic networking became a necessary skill out there for us. We could communicate ad hoc from computer to computer. There's a way to do that, and there's a way to set it up. I'm not going to go into that because that's going to be down a basic networking skill, in which case if you're needing that, you need to Google how to join two computers together without a router. That worked. I think that worked for 1 year, and it did pretty good. Now we know exactly how many contacts we have, everything's scored, and if I decide to switch to a different band or something that he was already on previously, then I know that I'm not going to have to worry about duplicate. And this also comes up with paper logs. If you've got like 30 or 40 pages of logs, and you go and you work another station, and they come back and they say, oh yeah, you're a duplicate, we've already worked you. Now you're going to have to go through those logs and make sure that yes, you indeed actually worked them. So then once we started adding the third station and the fourth station, because we've never really done anything more than just a 4 alpha station, although we could actually take this entire operation that we're doing now for a 4 alpha station and migrate it into a 20 alpha station if we really wanted to. It wouldn't really be all that much difficult to do because there really isn't much on the networking side that you need to worry about in order to do a 20 alpha station versus a 3 alpha station or a 2 alpha station on a network. So again, you do need to have some basic networking skills, some basic computer skills. Here's where I encourage you to go out and actually seek a little bit of basic networking skills. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a little video in what we have used in the past. Some basic routers, where we've gone from, starting from a basic Netgear router all the way up to what we use now as a cradle point router, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I'll show a couple diagrams and I'll do some demonstration on that here in just a little bit. I hope everybody has a basic understanding of how to set up a home network. Now if you don't, then my recommendation is go out there and look for a couple good YouTube videos on how to set up a good Wi-Fi network at your house. Essentially, this network diagram is exactly how we've kind of got it set up out there in the field. We have our cradle point, which is our broadband modem right here. And then we can link it over to another router, although our cradle point acts as our router as well as our wireless access point. But you could get it down as granular as this if you needed to, all right? So if you can find just a broadband modem and a regular router, and it doesn't matter what router it is. It could be a Cisco router if you want, or it can be a Netgear router, or a TrendNet router, or just some generic, Joe's router or something of that nature. You can actually do this. If your router doesn't have Wi-Fi capability, then you're going to have some sort of wireless access point. So you can come in here and do a wireless access point and then connect up all of your devices to that wireless access point. Now, if you have an MCOM trailer or just a regular trailer, and one of these days, maybe the Mesa Amateur Radio Club will actually have a networking trailer or a club trailer, you could actually have a printer out there in the field if you wanted to, or a scanner out there in the field. You can actually do voice over IP on this. One of the things that we would like to be able to do is basically hook up Cisco or Polycom phones or something to our system so we can actually make phone calls to our other members down in the valley. When we're up there on the Mogollon Rim, we'd like to be able to connect up through a tunnel all the way down to our Arden mesh network down here in the valley. And then if one of our members is still down in the valley and wants to talk to us, he can just basically pick up a voice over IP phone system, dial our little extension or our hot number, and talk with us over cellular network without having to go through the repeaters. And again, during field day, if you guys have ever listened to a local repeater in a major metropolitan area like Phoenix, Arizona, or California or something like that, those repeaters on field day weekend get used a ton. So it's hard to actually jump in there and make a connection with somebody else because there's so many other people doing the exact same thing. So having the voice over IP communications through Arden is a very, very super idea, a very great idea. It allows communications, but more importantly, this entire setup can be utilized if you're at a hospital during a disaster or something of that nature, and you have multiple different hospitals manned by these go boxes. By this type of a setup, you could actually communicate with each other via the mesh networking as well. So you can take this into an Arden level and get out there and actually do this. If we had multiple different clubs set up around here, or just take Mesa Amateur Radio Club. Let's say, we have Vinny and Frank and Chad and myself, Joanne, and a couple other people connecting up, and we're doing a club event where we can aggregate our scores, because field day doesn't allow you to aggregate your scores, but there are other contests out there that do allow you to aggregate your scores. So we could all be sitting here working from our home station, communicating with each other, sharing our logs across one networking, across Arden network, and talking to each other via voice over IP while on the radio as well. So this allows multiple different setups, and in a disaster situation, this might be actually a very super critical setup that you even think about or even have. And basically all it takes is some basic networking skills. You have your laptop and you connect it up to the wireless access point, which is connected to your router, which is connected to your broadband modem, which is then connected to your internet. But more importantly, for field day, you can have multiple laptops all connected up to the same wireless access point, all connected to the same router, and now you can be sharing logs, pictures, and things of that nature with each other. So, and that's pretty much what we have done.
Okay, so this is the history of the mobile internet in the woods. It started out with using just a Wi-Fi router running WM7RC for storing the log file that everybody could centrally access. From there, we started to get the bright idea of, well, let's see if we can add internet to this. Obviously, this is not an internet-capable router, and we certainly don't have a hardline broadband out. Unfortunately, with this particular router, and a lot of routers that I found, they are not able to do Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi easily, even with the WM7RC, even though it supports it, I was never able to get it to work stably. So what I did for that method is I have a small Netgear travel router. Using this here, and plugged in the Netgear travel router using the port for the LAN port on the back of the travel router, and actually ran that to the broadband port of this router, and then connected the wireless portion of this router to the 4G hotspot. And it worked. And it worked well. It was just a little bit of a clunky solution. From there, we moved up to a Netgear Nighthawk router. The idea with this one here is the first router that was an old Linksys. It did not have external antennas, so how you see it is how it is. There's no external antennas. Works great, pretty good range. But when we moved up to the Nighthawk, it had triple MIMO and much better range. And at the same time, I purchased a cradle point that had basically it takes a cellular modem in the slot here. And you'll see a piece of that later. The modem's actually been moved to another device. And then it provides 2 hardline network ports just off of the cellular card. So this is great. This is a This is much more of a corporate device. This is used by corporations. A lot of times this is a slightly older device now. Still works great, but they're available relatively cheaply on eBay, about $150. The benefit to using these two routers with the WM7RC is that it supported you could plug a USB thumb drive into the back of the router, and in this case actually it was the front of the router, and it would share files from that thumb drive to everybody on the network, and that was great. So we would put our log file onto that, and it would work. Moving up, we've got some of the new devices which are also by Cradlepoint. Some of this is familiarity with them. They are not. It is best for an IT person to configure them. They are not 100% straightforward for configuration, but when they work, they do work well. This is a ruggedized version meant for installation in ambulances, police cars, etc. I actually bought this one to put in my truck. I obviously haven't done so yet. Maybe I will one day. But it's very similar to the main device we'll be using this year for our wireless internet, which is a much larger Cradlepoint all-in-one router.
Now here's a basic Cradlepoint wireless diagram. We've got the internet. That's what this cloud indicates. You've got the cellular towers, which is what connects up to the internet, and then you connect via LTE to your Cradlepoint. But your Cradlepoint is also nice because you can actually connect this up to an alternative internet source. So let's say you're part of a Red Cross or something of that nature. You could actually take this whole entire Go box with your Cradlepoint, and you can have it set up so that if you're in a building that actually has hardwired internet, you can connect directly to them, and then all of a sudden now you've got a good wireless connection here. But if for some strange reason, let's say that hardwired internet connection goes down, but you still have cellular network. Now you've got a backup to that network, okay? And that's what, a good emergency plan is going to have multiple different sources of backups and redundancy, all right? So that's what we have out there with ours set up. Typically we use the cellular network, but if we were near somebody's house or we were near another building that actually had internet, we could actually very well just connect directly to the internet from their internet connection. And then from there, you can have your servers or your PCs or something connect directly to the Cradlepoint, or you can have it connected up to the Wi-Fi. And that's pretty much what we have. Now, the nice thing about this is if we had multiple different sites, we could actually link a VPN tunnel in between the two Cradlepoints using cellular network or the regular internet, and then we'd have a VPN connection between both of these. Now, the cellular network, guess what? Doesn't actually have to be the cellular network. In an Arden situation, you could actually have the Cradlepoint go directly straight through the Arden network, okay, the mesh network. And that's where this would be actually very, very useful, is in a mesh network situation. Now you've got a Cradlepoint who can do cellular network, regular internet, as well as mesh network. It all depends on how you've got it set up within the Cradlepoint. And again, this is not going to be how to set up the Cradlepoint to do this. That will probably be another video. But right now you got to understand that this capability is here right now. And this is primarily exactly how we how we do our things. how we set it up, we actually put our router on an actual 12-volt battery system, its own dependent power system. And the reason why we do that is because sometimes at nighttime we shut the generators down. You know, if we're in a big, large camping area where we have noise rules that we got to adhere to, 10 o'clock, generators shut down. Well, laptops can usually last about 6 hours to maybe 8 hours on batteries. So we don't necessarily need to power the laptops themselves. We just need to power the router itself. So we'll hook that up on a 12-volt battery system, and I think we've done solar with a little minor solar charger onto that little that 12-volt battery system just to keep it charged up throughout the daytime. And then we can actually switch the router over at that time over to a regular power source, or just keep it on the 12-volt battery system. We found that just keeping it on the 12-volt battery system works really, really well. So here's basically the cradle point wire diagram, and quite honestly, this can be used for pretty much any of your wireless devices. Pretty much any wireless device out there typically uses a 12-volt connection anyways. If you can figure out exactly how to wire up your Wi-Fi, your router, you can actually do this. Now this is primarily for an in-vehicle setup, but this can be used for an RV, or it can actually be used for out in the wilds without even actually having this set up. You can actually set this up in a small Go box and do something very similar to this. So essentially what you have is you have your battery. This ignition switch can just basically be an on and off switch on your battery box. It doesn't necessarily have to be a car ignition or anything of that nature. I highly recommend a fuse panel. The fuse panel just basically protects your equipment. And then from there, what we have is our cradle point, which we have joined to our cellular network. Our club has really gone to the point where we use cellular network. And yes, it does chew up data when you allow people to just willy-nilly free use the internet. If they connect up to your cradle point, to your wireless network while in camp, there's chances are they're probably out there surfing the web, looking at Facebook, watching YouTube, Netflix, things of that nature. And yes, you will drain through a lot of these cellular network data. We've got it set up. The way the cradle point is set up is you can actually track usage by user. And we'll go into that a little bit later on. We'll show some back screens of that and how that's kind of set up. That's going to be a different video. This is just going to be a general video to get you basically set up for field day. I'm hoping to have this video out before field day and announce. Let you guys go out there and see exactly what we have done and try to either mimic it or imitate it or set up your own system. All right, it's not that difficult. And I'm kind of surprised that clubs aren't doing this, but I know that there are some clubs who do. And it doesn't really require a lot of skills to do just a basic private network in the forest, okay? You don't even have to join to the cellular network if you don't want to. You can just basically set it up so that there's a Wi-Fi router out there that's connected to, even connected to one basic computer that's running as the server. You can get that all set up. And then eventually what we're going to want to do is we want to join this to the Arden mesh network so that we can transfer files to an FTP server off-site. Essentially, it allows us to move that data from our field day place and move it over to a server downtown Phoenix, or to a data center or something of that nature, so that we don't have to worry about data loss. What happens if you put it on a thumb drive, and when you're breaking things down and everything, and somebody puts that thumb drive into their pocket and then walks off, grabs their keys and everything, and pulls, reaches into their pocket, pulls everything out of their pocket, trying to get their car keys, and all of a sudden that thumb drive falls to the forest floor, down to the dirt, and then gets covered up by a little bit of dirt or something like that, and then they drive off. Well, now you've just lost all of your data on a thumb drive out in the middle of nowhere. You know, it goes in, you can always set up some sort of backup or something of that nature, and it's always wise to back that up. And what I mean by backing it up, you can simply just copy it, send it via the network over to multiple different computers so that you have more than one copy. And then that way, if somebody does lose the thumb drive, no worries. You know, you can just basically grab it off of somebody else's computer or transfer it via OneDrive or via the cloud or something of that nature. What are the pros and cons of doing a Wi-Fi in the forest? We'll start off with the pros. All right, we can have basically anybody with a laptop. You know, I mean, shoot, I've got a Microsoft Surface right here. Anybody who's got a Windows machine can utilize our logging software on our network. Actually, it's not even our logging software. This is N3FJP software. We really love this. It's an easy to set up, and I'll kind of go through it, do some screen shares and everything of how to kind of play around with the networking here in a little bit. But primarily, the pros are anybody with a Windows laptop can join our network. All we have to do is give them the SSID and the password, and then they're connected. They can open up N3FJP, do the TCP IP settings, and then voila, they're on there. They can start sharing data. They can pull down all the logs, be utilizing it. And every time that they put something into their laptop, it goes to everybody else's laptop on the network. That way, everybody has that data. Everybody knows exactly where everybody's set up. It allows for one location for logs, but it also allows everybody to have a copy of it, because you can actually download that copy onto your own laptop if you want to. So at the very end of the whole entire event, what we'll do is we'll have everybody go into FJP, the N3FJP software, and go save those logs down to their own computers. Now we've got multiple computers with multiple sets of the same data. And if we end up losing one, or somebody's laptop gets broken or destroyed, or for some strange reason, we have the capability of resurrecting that data. But at the same time, our entire setup allows us to get to the internet. It allows us to do Facebook streaming. This is one thing that we like to do as a club. We like to share our videos. We like to share our experience on our Facebook page. All you have to do is look up the Mesa Amateur Radio Club on Facebook and then join. We do live streams. We do virtual meetings. We've been doing this for at least the last couple years, and we feel that this actually works out really well for our club and for our group. But it also allows us to go to our website and update information. It allows us to do a call sign lookup. So if we're sitting there trying to figure out a DX station's call sign or something like that, trying to figure out exactly where they're located at, we can go out there to QRZ or any of the other call sign lookups and look them up and see exactly where they're located at. At the same time, where we camp out on top of the Mogollon Rim, usually back in the woods, and there's a lot of trees around, so you can't quite see the sky as well. It's not like we're sitting on top of a mountain where we have a 360-degree clear view of everything all around us and we can see storms coming in. So now what we can do is we can pull up the National Weather Service's page and look at their radar data and see if there's any storms headed our way. We can get weather alerts that way. Yes, you can pull up the radios and turn on the weather alert announcement. Or you can even get one of those little weather radios to set up out there in the field. And if there's an alert that comes down, that alarm goes off on it. But this allows us to pull up our radar data and go, oh, okay, there is a storm. Here's where we're at, and here's where everything's all tracking. And this is especially important during monsoon storms. We've actually had one instance where we were out there just chugging along with field day and everything, and then all of a sudden the wind started picking up and the temperature started to drop, and then we started hearing thunder in the distance. But we didn't know which direction the storm was tracking. Was it going to go around us? Was it going the opposite direction of us? Was it to the north and tracking, to the east of us? Things of that nature. We didn't have internet at that point in time. The only thing that we had was just our sense of, well, we better pack everything up. Our club actually has a policy, a lightning policy in our club rules, where if we start hearing thunder and start seeing lightning, we basically shut every piece of equipment down. We turn our generators off. We take our antennas down, disconnect our coax, move our coax into a centralized location or something of that nature, and then we start taking shelter. All right, we don't want to mess around with lightning. Especially with electricity and wired antennas up in the trees. That's just a disaster waiting to happen. All right, but at the same time, we have members who have a hard time finding us in the forest, or don't know exactly where we're camped at, or they may be sitting there saying, hey, listen, I changed my mind, I'm not going to be able to come up, and they're able to message us through the internet. A lot of the repeaters, almost every single one of you probably have dealt with this. You turn on the local repeater during field day, and that repeater is just constantly be bombarded with people's radio traffic. So the cons, well, it requires electricity, it requires a battery, and it requires a router, it requires computers and everything. And as we all know, electronics fail, and they fail at the most inopportune time out there in the field. So you kind of have to have a little bit of knowledge on how to work around that. I'm not saying that everybody's capable of thinking about this, but this is something, especially for those people who do this as an emergency preparedness, you need to think outside the box when it comes to this type of equipment. You know that this is going to fail. So what is your backup plan? Our club's backup plan is paper logs. All right, we're just going to basically, we all have cell phones out there. All right, so what we do with our cell phones we use that as our time frame. We already know that this is on local time. Our software here is set up to do everything on UTC time. So things that we have learned. A file location on the router works best, but we need to have dedicated computer on at all times. And this becomes a lot tougher. And this is where having a good backup and a good plan, good sit down and organize, practice. We go camping 4 times a year. Basically, we go out and we set this thing up every single time we go out. So for those of you who go camping once a year, you guys are going to have to set this up prior to and test it out and make sure it works and think things through. So our club goes camping 4 times a year, and that's where we've gained this capability of doing this. Is each and every single time it's a new learning curve. Okay, every single time that we go out there, we test things, we try things. Let's figure this out, let's try this, let's see if we can break this, let's see if we can do it this way. And then when it comes down to field day, we're pretty much ready. We already know pretty much exactly how we're going to set this up. Now, Wi-Fi is finicky at best, and especially cellular network is very finicky. You may be sitting there saying, well, according to the cellular map, I should have cellular connection out there, and you get out there and you've got like maybe a bar or maybe nothing. We've been in spots where we've actually had to raise our cellular antennas, and we've got the Yagi antennas. We actually had them put them into a phased array where we actually had 2 antennas connecting to our Wi-Fi hotspots in order to get just a cellular connection. Now, it was horrible connection, but we were able to send instant messages. We were able to pull down a little bit of radar data. We were able to post pictures, but not video. So it was a good learning curve, I will have to say. And we learned a lot from that trip. The one thing that we did definitely learn was you kind of sort of have to understand that you may or may not necessarily have cellular connection. But that doesn't stop you from not being able to use a logging software. As long as you guys are close together and you guys can see each other via Wi-Fi, you can do logging software amongst your camp. You don't need cellular connection, all right? So I'm going to put that out there right now. So I hope that this video was a little bit of educational for you guys. I hope that you guys learned something. If you want to make a comment, ask a question, feel free to go right ahead and put a comment down below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as hit the little bell button so that you get notified when we have new videos. I hope that we make contact with a lot of people out there. Hope that anybody who's watching this, hope we make contact. Do a QSO out there. And then on top of that, club members, I hope that you guys all join us and everything. Please let us know if you're going to be able to make it, and if you got questions, feel free to give us a contact or give us a an email. My email address is Kilo Echo 7 Victor Lima Charlie at WM7RC.org. Again, that's KE7VLC, my call sign, at WM7RC.org. I appreciate it. Thank you guys. Have a good day. 73.